technology that we have. So if you have your phone and your app, please pull it out. So the poll that we're going to do now is really what was interesting. I said in the morning that I've spoken to many companies and organizations that said they're very optimistic about the future of global development. And some people looked at me sideways and said, really? So I really want to see what you all think. What do you think right now? How are you feeling about the state of global development and the future? So pull out your phone. We're going to activate that poll. And the answers that you can choose from are: I'm optimistic, progress will continue to be made; I'm neutral, I have a wait and see approach; or it's not great, the current challenges are impacting my work. So you should get a notice. Andy, is it working? Okay, oh good, you have it? Okay. Oh good, okay, Andy has the results. Most of you are optimistic, good. No, that's fantastic to hear. So next we have the full session this afternoon. We're going to start with Scott Jackson, who is one of my board members, but also I've known him even before that. If you don't know Scott, Susan's going to introduce him. Susan Jeffords, another one of my board members. So I'm going to bring up Susan to do the full introduction. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. It's really an honor for me to stand between you and hearing Scott Jackson. I've known Scott for some time and have enormous admiration for him, and so it's really a pleasure for me to introduce him. There is a bio that tells you more about his background in the brochure, but let me just say a few words about highlights of Scott's work. Scott is currently President and CEO of Global Impact. Global Impact's mission is to grow global philanthropy and build partnerships and resources for the world's most vulnerable people. It has raised $1.8 billion since inception. A global development, fundraising, and marketing veteran, Scott has held leadership positions in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including the global health and development nonprofits PATH and World Vision. He has worked in more than 60 countries, and his global relief and development efforts have taken him to remote villages in Africa and Asia, to the heart of the Holy Land, and inside some of the most powerful institutions and governments around the world. Scott has worked with numerous global leaders, including 4 U.S. presidents and their administrations, and he has represented international development issues with the offices of U.S. Secretaries of State Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell, and Hillary Clinton. But today he's here to share with us the message of his new book, Take Me With You, One Person's Journey to Find the Charity Within. I know the book is available out there, and I encourage you to pick it up and read it. His purpose in the book is, as he says, to offer a message of hope. At a time when, frankly, messages of hope seem to be losing their ability to be heard amidst the cacophony of anger, accusations, and acrimony. Scott's story is a powerful one of personal hardship, experiences of discrimination, and pain. But more importantly, it is also a story of resilience, forgiveness, and compassion. From that story, he models, as he says in the book, how each of us can harness the power of our own personal struggles to influence others and to have our own impact on the world. His message to those of us in this room today is especially cogent. He concludes by saying, for each of us as global citizens, our legacy will depend on how well we connect our personal stories and journeys to the goals and to the role that each of us can play as a game changer to do our part to change the world in our lifetime. I am deeply pleased and honored to welcome to the stage my Global Washington colleague, a friend and thought partner, and someone whom I admire enormously, Scott Jackson.
Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you for all that you do in your leadership role with the university and significantly beyond the university. It's a real humbling honor for me to be here in the room. Each and every one of you, in fact, I look over and I see another person that have contributed to my own ability to be a part of global development and to be part of the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And it's also really a privilege because this is the largest concentration of a organized community that is inclusive of all sectors, that really is focused about global development and about bringing the awareness and the funding necessary here at home to support global goals both here in Seattle, across the state of Washington, but also around the world. You should be really proud of that because it'll be these communities of each of us, yes, that will be and are the leaders of global development for the present and for the future. It's particularly an honor for me because, again, so many heroes of my own life are in the room. Bill and Paula Clapp, who had the vision for Global Washington, among other organizations, and have always been there for me. Tom Waldron, who would call me periodically, even though I was nothing. I was just a kid. And Rich Stearns, who had to take a big risk to hire me. And without that opportunity, I would not have been able to serve at World Vision and at PATH and now at Global Impact. And without Rich, I also would have probably not gotten the book written. It took me a lot longer to write mine than it did his. But his own story is one of leadership and one of really making personal his journey to use for the good of others. And I'd be remiss without mentioning that there'll be a panel following me of additional heroes, including Carol, Neil Kinney Geyer, Harold. And last but not least, I hope all of you know that I could mention each and every one of you, but I have to say that I have such admiration for Steve Crane, who lives and fights polio each and every day. So today, I do want to share what I think will be a fitting theme for you, which is that actually I think we are the leadership of global development. And I think private philanthropy and all forms of the private sector are just as important as the public sector. And when I say private sector, I mean the non-voluntary sector and all forms of philanthropy, all forms of business involvement, the other sectors, if you will, who now represent such a significant element to global development. I'll come back to that. But today I want to talk a little bit about the SDGs as a guiding framework, really the progress we've made, the role of philanthropy and of the nonprofit sectors, and then finally, I do want to get personal with you and share a little bit of my own story and my own journey. So establishing a framework, I think as all of us know, there was tremendous progress with the MDGs. But with the Sustainable Development Goals, the whole world got a chance to vote, to get engaged, and 192 countries voted for a global framework with 162 targets, with 17 key goals that for me, I often think of as inclusive of at least three major themes. One of eradicating extreme poverty, one of eliminating inequality in gender, health, education, and one around the environment that supports certainly the other two. And indeed, these goals are interconnected. They actually can't be delivered without each other. In fact, it's very hard. We do SDG mapping for Fortune 500 corporations. It's very hard to map because you have to realize that each and every goal is integrated with so many others. And we're all in it together, not only governments, but the private sector, the nonprofit sector. We have, again, Fortune 500s creating organizations like Impact 2030. We have organizations like Global Washington that bring all the sectors together to support these goals. And we also have these goals not only for the world, but for our own communities. We have another thing going on, disasters. So 327 in 2016 alone. So again, this is historical data. 200 million people were affected by either natural or man-made disasters. And as you can see, these numbers actually continue to go up, but man-made disasters are now equaling and/or exceeding natural disasters. Recognizing the progress, whether it's in disaster relief and recovery or whether it's in the goals, I think what's really interesting is for us to take a quick look back and a look ahead. So if you think about the trends in extreme poverty, it's pretty powerful. I mean, poverty has actually declined globally from 1.7 billion people living on less than $2 a day in 1999 to 760 million. Still a lot of people living in poverty, but dramatic progress and worthy of us continuing to move forward with. When you think more broadly of other progress, if you will, report cards, as we look at the, literally the second anniversary of the Sustainable Development Goals, it's also pretty powerful. The proportion of population suffering from hunger declined from 15% to 11% in the last 15 years. Between 1990 and 2015, global maternal mortality declined by 44%. And the mortality rate of children under 5 who die from preventable diseases has been cut in half, from 10 million to 5 million a year. Still a big number, and still very, very solvable. Pneumonia, diarrhea. So we're well on our way, but we have work to do.